There was once a city so beautiful that Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in human history, stopped in his tracks. After crossing thousands of miles of desert and mountain, after defeating the Persian Empire, after conquering half the known world, he arrived at this city, and he said, "Everything I heard about this place is true. Except for one thing, it was more beautiful than I could ever imagine." That city was Samarkand. For over 2,700 years, it stood at the absolute center of the world, not just geographically, but economically, culturally, and politically. Every great empire that ever existed wanted it. Every great conqueror in history fought for it. And in 1220, the most feared man who ever lived destroyed it in just 3 days. This is the untold story of Samarkand, the city that connected the entire ancient world, and the city whose curse may have changed the outcome of World War II. To understand Samarkand, you need to understand where it sits. Look at a map of the ancient world. Draw a line from China to Europe. Draw another line from India to Persia. Those two lines cross at exactly one point. Samarkand. The city was founded over 2,700 years ago, before Rome existed, before the Persian Empire reached its peak, before Alexander was even born. Its original name was Marakanda. The people who built it, the Sogdians, were not warriors or conquerors. They were merchants, and they were the greatest traders the ancient world had ever seen. The Sogdians had trading posts stretching from the Mediterranean all the way to China. They spoke dozens of languages. They carried silk, spices, gold, and glass across thousands of miles of dangerous territory. And at the center of their entire network sat Samarkand. Marco Polo passed through here on his journey to China. He described it as a very large and splendid city. That was 1,000 years after it was founded, and it was still the most important trading city in the world. In 329 BC, Alexander the Great arrived at the gates of Samarkand with his army. The city surrendered, and Alexander, who had destroyed cities that resisted him, was so overwhelmed by its beauty that he spared it completely. He walked its streets, he visited its markets, he met its scholars, and he said words that have been remembered for 2,300 years. Everything I heard about this city is true, except it was more beautiful than I imagined. Alexander stayed in Samarkand. He held celebrations here. He made it part of his empire. But even Alexander, who conquered from Greece to India, couldn't hold it forever. After his death, Samarkand passed from empire to empire. The Persians, the Arabs, the Turks, each one left their mark. Each one made it greater. By the 13th century, Samarkand was one of the most sophisticated cities on earth. Its libraries held thousands of manuscripts. Its astronomers mapped the stars. Its architects built structures that defied explanation. And then Genghis Khan arrived. In 1220, the ruler of Samarkand made a fatal mistake. He insulted Genghis Khan's trade envoys. He had them executed. To Genghis Khan, this was not just an insult. It was a declaration of war. He turned the full force of the Mongol Empire toward Samarkand. The city prepared. It had massive walls. It had an army of 110,000 soldiers, one of the largest in the region. It had supplies for a long siege. It had everything it needed. It lasted 3 days. In 3 days, a city that had stood for over 2,000 years was erased. Genghis Khan killed every soldier who fought back. He conscripted 30,000 young men into his army. He took 30,000 craftsmen as slaves because he needed their skills for his next conquests. He burned what was left. A historian who visited Samarkand years after the destruction wrote that he could not tell where the streets had been. The ruins stretched as far as he could see in every direction. The greatest city in the ancient world reduced to ash in 72 hours because one man insulted a trade envoy. For 150 years after the Mongol invasion, Samarkand was almost completely abandoned. The population that once numbered in the hundreds of thousands was gone. The libraries were burned. The markets were silent. The grand buildings that had stood for centuries were rubble. Travelers who passed through described a ghost city, weeds growing through the ruins of palaces, silence where there had once been the noise of the greatest market in the world. It seemed like Samarkand was finished forever. And then, in 1336, a child was born in a small village just south of the ruined city. His father was the chief of a minor tribe. Nobody paid any attention to him. His name was Timur, and he would rebuild Samarkand into something even greater than it had ever been before. Timur rose from nothing. As a young man, he was wounded in battle. An arrow left him with a permanent limp. His enemies mocked him. They called him Timur Haileng, Timur the Lame. In Europe, they called him Tamerlane. He didn't care. By the time he was 34 years old, he controlled all of Central Asia. By the time he was 50, his empire stretched from Mongolia to the borders of Europe. He defeated the Ottoman Sultan. He sacked Delhi. He crushed the Golden Horde. Historians estimate that his conquests caused the deaths of 17 million people, 5% of the entire world population at the time. On the battlefield, Tamerlane was merciless. His victories were marked by towers built from the skulls of his enemies. But when he returned to Samarkand, he was a completely different man. He brought back the greatest architects from Persia, the finest craftsmen from India, the most brilliant scholars from every city he conquered. He poured the wealth of a dozen empires into one city. He once said, "Let he who doubts our power look upon our buildings." The Registan, 3 magnificent madrasas surrounding a vast open square, still stands today exactly as he built it. The Bibi Kanyam Mosque, built by over 10,000 craftsmen, was so large that its dome could be seen from days away. The Gur-e-Amir, his own mausoleum, covered in turquoise and gold tile work that still takes your breath away 600 years later. Samarkand became the Athens of Central Asia, the most beautiful city in the Islamic world. And Tamerlane became its god. Tamerlane died in 1405, on his way to conquer China. He was buried in the Gur-e-Amir mausoleum in Samarkand, and before the tomb was sealed, an inscription was carved into the inner stone. It read, "Whoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." For 536 years, nobody touched it. Then in June 1941, Soviet archaeologists arrived in Samarkand. Stalin had ordered them to open the tomb. He wanted to verify that Tamerlane's remains were really there. Local elders warned them. Religious leaders warned them. They said the inscription was a real curse. Do not open the tomb. The archaeologists opened it anyway. On June 19th, 1941, they broke the seal of Tamerlane's tomb. 3 days later, on June 22, 1941, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in the history of the world. 3 million soldiers crossed into the Soviet Union simultaneously. It was the beginning of the most destructive conflict humanity had ever seen. Was it a coincidence? The Soviet leadership didn't think so. Soldiers at the front were telling stories about the curse. Morale was collapsing. Stalin, who had personally ordered the tomb opened, now ordered it resealed. In November 1942, Tamerlane's remains were reburied with full Islamic funeral rites, with prayers and proper ceremony. Exactly 1 month later, in December 1942, the Battle of Stalingrad turned in favor of the Soviets. The tide of the entire war changed. Historians have debated this for 80 years. Coincidence or curse, nobody has ever been able to fully explain the timing. Today, Samarkand still stands. The Registan still rises above the city, its blue and gold domes catching the light exactly as they did when Tamerlane built them 600 years ago. UNESCO has declared it a World Heritage Site, one of the most important historic places on Earth. But Samarkand is not a museum. People still live here, still pray in its mosques, still walk through the same streets that Alexander the Great walked 2,300 years ago. Think about what this city has survived. It was founded before Rome existed. It was conquered by Alexander the Great. It was the economic center of the entire ancient world for 1,000 years. It was completely destroyed by Genghis Khan and rebuilt even greater by Tamerlane. Its tomb cursed the Soviet Union, or maybe just predicted what was already coming. And through all of it, Samarkand survived. Every empire that tried to possess it eventually fell. Every conqueror who tried to destroy it eventually disappeared. But Samarkand remained. It was never just a city. It was the place where East met West, where the ancient world came together, where history was made and remade across 2,700 years. And somewhere beneath its ancient stones, the full story has never been told. Subscribe for more untold stories from history, because the next one will change everything you thought you knew.